The tribe expelled 2 Apache women for being widowed. The cowboy said, "Come with me." The desert sun beat down relentlessly on the small Apache camp, where a heavy silence hung in the air. The land, dry and cracked, seemed to echo the sorrow that had taken root in the hearts of the tribe. The evening light cast long shadows over the dusty ground, but it did little to ease the oppressive heat. The tribe had gathered near the remains of a fire, its warmth fading with the dying light. The elders, men and women who had seen the seasons change many times over, looked down with heavy eyes at 2 women who stood on the outskirts of the gathering. The first woman, a figure of strength despite the lines of grief etched into her face, was called Tana. Her black hair, streaked with strands of gray, was bound in a simple braid that hung down her back. She was the widow of a brave warrior, a man who had given his life in battle defending the tribe. Her eyes, though sorrowful, held a fierce dignity, a reflection of the strength that had always defined her. Beside her stood her daughter-in-law, Ahuli, a younger woman whose face, though still youthful, was marked with a profound sadness. Ahuli had lost her husband in a tragic hunting accident, a loss that had shattered her world. Now both women stood together, their hearts torn by grief and the harsh reality of what was unfolding before them. The chief of the tribe, a tall man named Koya, stood before them. His broad shoulders were draped with the markings of his status as a leader, his face stern and unyielding. His eyes, cold and distant, bore into the 2 women as he spoke. "You have lost your husbands," Koya's voice rang out, cutting through the heavy silence. "The spirits have called them, and now you must leave. You are no longer part of this tribe. You are widows, and it is against our customs to allow widows to remain. Your grief brings nothing but misfortune, and we cannot allow that to disrupt the balance of the tribe." The words struck Tana like a blow to the chest. She had lived her life in service to the tribe, had raised children, had buried a husband, and now, after all that, she was being cast aside like an outcast. She fought to maintain her composure, but the weight of the chief's decision pressed down on her heart. She had always been strong, but now she felt vulnerable, exposed to the harsh world that awaited them outside the camp. "No," she said quietly but firmly, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We will not leave in disgrace. We will go, but not because you say so. We have no place here anymore, but we will not carry the shame you place on us." Ahuli, her eyes filled with shock and anger, stepped forward, her voice rising in protest. "How can you do this to us?" she cried. "We've already lost everything. Our husbands, our families, and now you cast us out as though we are less than human?" The chief's face remained unchanged, as though the pain of the 2 women was insignificant. He turned his back to them, signaling that the conversation was over. "It is done," he said, his words final. "Gather your things and leave. The tribe has spoken." The sound of the chief's departure echoed in the stillness of the desert. The women stood there, unable to move, as the weight of the situation settled in their hearts. Tana reached out to steady Ahuli, whose body trembled with fury. The younger woman's anger was raw and uncontained, but Tana, with all the strength she could muster, held her back. "Let it go," Tana said softly. "We cannot change their minds. The tribe has spoken, but we will survive this, Ahuli. We always have." Ahuli's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, knowing her mother-in-law was right. There was nothing left for them here. Their world, the one they had known, was gone. They were alone. With heavy hearts, they began to gather what little they had. The world they once knew was slipping away, and the harsh desert awaited them. As they packed their belongings, the sound of a horse approaching broke the silence. A tall, rugged figure emerged from the shadows of the desert, his dark eyes scanning the scene before him. He was a cowboy, dressed in worn leather, a wide-brimmed hat shading his face. Tana looked up, surprised to see someone else in this desolate place. The man approached them cautiously, his eyes never leaving the 2 women. "I heard what happened," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "I know what it's like to lose someone." Tana regarded him warily, her hand instinctively moving toward the knife at her belt. "And who are you?" she asked. "My name's Jake," the cowboy replied, his voice calm but firm. "I've seen loss. I've seen people cast aside, but I'm offering you something different." Ahuli narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "What do you want from us?" "I'm not asking for anything," Jake said, his eyes steady. "I'm offering you a chance to start over, a place where you won't be burdened by your past." The older woman's gaze softened. She had been on the edge of hopelessness, but something about this man, his words, and his calm demeanor stirred something in her. "Where would we go?" she asked. "Come with me," Jake replied, a hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I know a place." A place where you can rebuild. Tana looked at Ahuli, who, though hesitant, seemed to find some flicker of hope in the stranger's offer. With no other options before them, Tana nodded. We will come with you. And so the two women, their past and their grief weighing heavily on their hearts, took the first step toward a future they could not yet see. They left behind the tribe, the place they had once called home, and followed the cowboy into the unknown desert, where the winds whispered of new beginnings. The sun had set, and the desert was cloaked in the cold embrace of night. The vastness of the wilderness stretched out before them, but in the distance a faint light flickered, a beacon in the darkness. As they walked in the shadow of the cowboy, Jake, Tana, and Ahuli felt a mixture of uncertainty and hope. The harsh desert that had once seemed like an enemy now felt like a strange new ally, offering them a path forward. The journey was long and difficult. The heat of the day had given way to the bitter cold of the night, but the flicker of the distant light kept them moving. With each step, the women felt a growing sense of relief, a sense that maybe they weren't entirely alone in this world after all. "Where are we going?" Ahuli asked, her voice breaking the silence that had settled between them. "What kind of place are you taking us to?" Jake turned slightly, his expression unreadable. "It's not far," he said simply. "A small settlement, far from the reaches of your tribe. People there live differently, free from the old rules. You'll have a chance to start fresh." Tana's heart, heavy with grief, began to feel lighter with each passing mile. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, her voice cautious but curious. Jake glanced back at her, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Nothing. I've seen too much pain in my life. I don't want anything from you. Just a chance for you to rebuild." They walked in silence for a while longer, the sound of their footsteps the only thing breaking the stillness of the desert night. Tana glanced at Ahuli, whose face was a mixture of exhaustion and hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, the younger woman seemed to believe there might be something more for them beyond the pain and loss they had known. As they approached the settlement, the warm glow of lanterns lit the way. It was a small community of people, many of whom had once been outcasts themselves. There were no judgments here, no laws of tribes or customs that demanded sacrifices from the vulnerable. The people of the settlement had built their lives from the ground up, and in their eyes, the women saw a glimmer of the hope they had lost in the wilderness. Jake led them to a small house on the edge of the settlement, where a warm fire crackled inside. He pushed open the door, and the flickering light of the fire illuminated the room. "This is your new home," he said, stepping aside to let them in. "Rest, you're safe now." Tana and Ahuli exchanged a glance, their faces reflecting a mixture of disbelief and relief. It wasn't the life they had expected, but it was theirs now. And in that moment it was enough.